Emirates is begging Airbus for an A380neo. Being the largest operator by an astronomical margin, it does make sense that President Sir Tim Clark has repeatedly made public statements about wanting an upgraded Super Jumbo, and has said Emirates will heavily back the program if Airbus decide to restart production. And seeing as Airbus has partnered with Singapore Airlines and Qantas for the bespoke A350 ultra-long range variants, maybe they will once again act on the customer's wishes and refresh the A380, especially if other airlines join Emirates in pressing Airbus for a new jet. This would also be a golden opportunity for engine maker Rolls-Royce to offer a slightly scaled down version of their Ultrafan engine, which has almost finished development testing and will revolutionise commercial travel, using the highest bypass ratio of any commercial jet engine, and a gearbox to allow the blade speed to remain subsonic, offering about 10% less fuel burn compared to its existing Trent XWB. But at the end of the day, the A380 was a commercial failure, despite being loved by flyers and enthusiasts alike. So in order for a Neo to be viable, it must avoid the pitfalls that doomed the A380, one of which was the production cost overruns, which amounted to an estimated additional $25 billion due to multiple factors like wiring redesign and reinforcement of the wing box and wing spars, which also led to longer delays. And by this point, the engines were outdated and inefficient, the order book was drying up, and hub and spoke models were being replaced by point-to-point routes using smaller, more efficient twin jets instead. Additional issues like less airport compatibility, extra fuel and maintenance expenses, and longer turnaround times meant the A380 was suited only to some business models, such as Emirates and Singapore Airlines. So how could an A380neo correct these issues? Before I show you the two main ways I imagine an A380neo could be achieved, the second of which is very interesting in my opinion, we must first look at the viability of a neo aircraft and the individual benefits and drawbacks of the general idea, regardless of how it's achieved. As I mentioned at the beginning, Emirates is hell-bent upon getting their hands on a re-engined A380. And Tim Clark has openly stated that they would be interested in buying at least 100 units if Airbus were to go ahead with production of a Neo. And this would give Airbus enough mass for relaunch, and could potentially be the reason why they would restart production in the first place. And if fuel savings and operating cost reductions are so much better than the original A380, or even more modern competition aircraft like the 747-8, then Airbus could easily snatch more market share for very large aircraft in the future, if that's what the aviation industry swings towards. Especially if slot restraints at busy airports in the future means that there will be a need for larger aircraft like the A380, which can move more passengers at once than any other airplane, and this will relieve congestion and maximise throughput at large hubs. And let's not forget the popularity of the aircraft. To the average flyer, they really don't care about which particular airplane they fly on, or anything about it, but that all changes when they fly the largest passenger jet in the world. And avgeek or not, everybody who flies on it is sad to get off. And because the A380 is so big, it actually gives a much more comfortable and quiet ride compared to other airplanes, having the lowest recorded noise level of 69.5 decibels. Versus the 787's 73 and A350's 75. This may not seem like a lot, but if you've ever flown on a 737, you will know how noisy they are, and the noise level there can reach 85 decibels. That's the same noise level as a blender.
Here we go! This is in the kitchen at home, yeah?
Newer engines on the A380 would further reduce that noise level, and if we add a luxurious modern interior, space for staircases, bars and lounge areas with nice seating and large TVs, as well as improved in-flight entertainment for all, then the A380neo would truly be the most comfortable passenger jet in service for a long time. And of course the most important reason to build the Neo would be new engines such as the previously mentioned Ultrafan, which could see fuel savings of a staggering 25%, along with other modifications such as new winglets like on the A320neo, or even split scimitars like the 737 MAX, which would decrease the wingtip vortices even more, reducing fuel burn at high altitude by limiting induced drag, which accounts for a higher percentage of drag at cruise. This all sounds great at the minute, but how could Airbus actually achieve this? Well, the obvious answer would be to build a new jet from scratch, so let's call this Method A. The main benefit is a clean sheet design, which would give way more upgrades than just engines, such as brand new redesigned wings, most likely made from carbon composites, giving tremendous weight savings. And if the entire airframe could be made from the same material, then not only would weight savings be made, but extra modifications could be made to optimize the aerodynamics of the airframe, resulting in more efficiency gains. In addition, the lifespan of the aircraft could potentially be extended beyond that of typical aerospace grade aluminium, because carbon fiber doesn't experience fatigue cracking like normal aluminium alloy. And to top it off, the flying experience will be enhanced through lower cabin altitude and higher humidity, similar to the A350 and 787, and will reduce tiredness and the feeling of jet lag. The next benefit of building from scratch is a long lease of life, which could be cheaper in the long run for airlines instead of keeping aging airframes running. So if all this is so good, why doesn't Airbus go ahead and build the Neo? The answer? Because the pros are heavily outnumbered by the cons. The first of which is the whole reason why the A380 was considered a commercial failure: cost. Just 250 A380s were built, and this wasn't even enough to break even, never mind make any profit. So why on earth would Airbus build it when there is even less demand for it than the original A380? Especially since the Toulouse final assembly line was converted into A320 production instead, following the industry shift towards twin jets. This would require new machinery, a second factory conversion, and at least a few years and billions of dollars spent before production can even begin. And then there'd be certification. And although it would likely be quicker than how long it takes Boeing to certify new aircraft, it would still be at least 8 years from production to entry into service. The other approach to an A380neo that I was talking about earlier would be a much better way for Airbus to refurbish the jet and not spend billions in the process. Let's call this Method B. Remember the Rolls-Royce Ultrafan engine from earlier? Well, if we look at the size of the A380's current engines, the Trent 900 or GP 7200, both of which have a fan diameter of 116 inches, and compare that to the size of the Ultrafan, which is 140 inches, fitting it will be a challenge. But Rolls-Royce have designed this engine with scalability in mind to expand its uses into the narrow body market as well, meaning the engine is fully scalable, and so a smaller version will fit under the wing of an A380. And if we do some boring maths, then we can work out roughly how much the scaled version will weigh. Using an estimated dry weight of 10,000 kilos for the original version, then we get about 8.3 tons for the scaled down version. If you see what I'm getting at, then just hold on a minute, because we can't just swap engine for engine. That's nearly 1.5 tons heavier than the A380's heaviest engine. So Airbus would likely need to strengthen the wings, pylons, and even redesign the engine nacelles. Even the infrastructure of the aircraft would need to be redone, such as electrics and fuel delivery. And at the end of the day, although quicker than waiting for a brand new airplane, this idea may still take a few months to a year to complete. But the biggest problem for Airbus? Profit. You see, when a new aircraft is built, the actual jet is sold separately to the engines, meaning the engine maker keeps all of the revenue from the sale of the engine. So with the idea of simply swapping engines, there is no revenue from selling an airframe, just the services and support when changing engines. This means there is less incentive for Airbus to simply send out its engineers and design team to replace the engines. If a small commission was made from the engine maker to Airbus during the engine swap, then Airbus would make more money than they otherwise would, and the engine supplier still benefits from the sale of 4 engines. And if we multiply this up by the global A380 fleet, we are talking billions of dollars in sales. As an example, the GE9X featured on the Boeing 777X ranges from a list price of $41 million to a staggering $55 million per engine. So what's good about this idea then? Well, to start, there's a massive cost saving, as just new mounts, pylons and engines would be way cheaper than buying an entire new airframe. Next, the time frame would be cut by an astronomical margin, and to the likes of Emirates, who rely heavily on their A380 fleet, this might be the difference between new engines or new airframes. And the final benefit of swapping engines versus a whole new airframe is simply because the most reductions in fuel burn are made through the engines. Despite the additional efficiency gains achieved by winglets, carbon fiber fuselage, and other aerodynamic improvements, the gas-guzzling engines account for a huge amount of inefficiencies. And the final benefit of Method B is flexibility, If Airbus doesn't want to build an A380neo because no other airlines are showing interest, then perhaps method B could solve the problems for both Emirates and Airbus. All this seems good, but what does the aviation industry actually think about an A380neo? You're probably fed up with me mentioning Tim Clark, but he is all for the idea at the minute. Rolls-Royce have restarted testing of their UltraFan program, which they say will fit a wide body in the next decade, but as of now they have no confirmed customers. However, most other airlines have doubled down on flexibility and efficiency, using smaller wide bodies instead of relying on large, low-frequency flights, which makes rebooking difficult when flights are disrupted. The most interesting opinion is actually from Airbus. Believe it or not, they haven't actually said no to the A380neo, and this may seem strange considering they converted their final assembly line in Toulouse into A320 production. Their officials have said there's not enough customer interest yet, but they haven't outright dismissed the idea altogether. So at the end of the day, both methods have their advantages and disadvantages, but only one is realistically viable for short to mid-term. It's not difficult to guess which. Obviously retrofitting the engines is the smarter choice. It's faster, cheaper, and fits Emirates' urgent need, and if successful, could give existing A380s at least a decade more of service. After all, current A380s have a relatively low number of pressurization cycles, so my guess is at least 15 to 20 years. A brand new A380, while it would be the comeback of a century, requires more customer interest and mammoth upfront cost. And unless more major carriers join Emirates in the fight for an A380neo, it's unlikely Airbus could justify the expense. So what do you guys think? Is a scaled down version of the UltraFan a good replacement? Maybe even the GE9X? Please leave a comment down below with your thoughts, and if you enjoyed this video, then here's some more you might like. Alright, I'll see you over there.